Hi, and welcome. You're listening to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 860B, and today's date is January 6th, 2016, and the title of the episode is U.S. Government Bringing All Players Together for World War III. Let's get into the economic collapse, political, and geopolitical news. Now, the U.S. government is continually trying to chip away at our rights. Of course, through Common Core, they're telling the children that the rights are actually privileges and the government can take them away. They're rewriting a lot of the Bill of Rights. Of course, they're saying it's to make it simpler for the children to understand, but what they're really doing is changing it so they don't understand what the real definition of the rights are. And we see that the government is moving quickly to chip away at the First Amendment, the Second Amendment, the Fourth Amendment, and the rest of our rights. And we see that the House of Democrats and the Attorney General are looking to censor free speech. And of course, the First Amendment allows us for free speech. Now remember, the First Amendment doesn't say, anything about hate speech. It doesn't say anything about what speech is allowed, because it's free. You can say whatever you want. If somebody doesn't like it, they don't have to listen. But it's your right to speak freely. When the government steps in and creates legislation that says, well, you can't say these words, you can't say that to that group, we forbid you from saying that over there, and if you do say these things, it's a crime. That's no longer free speech. That's controlled or permitted speech. And this is exactly what our government is trying to do. Now, I am not on the side of Republican, Democrat, or any other group. The side I'm on is the everyday person who lives here in the U.S., who supports the Constitution, who believes the government should be working for the people. Period. The end. That's it. But our government seems they have the right to tell us what we can and cannot say. And they're trying to pass a resolution, H. Resolution 569, condemning violence, bigotry, and hateful rhetoric towards Muslims in the United States. Now, if you commit a violent crime, that's a crime. I agree. But hateful speech or anything like that is trying to control people in what they can and cannot say. And that is an infringement on the First Amendment. The resolution goes on to denounce in the strongest terms the increase of hate speech. And this is what they're trying to use to convince everyone they have the right to control or permit certain speech. And they're saying what hate speech is intimidation, violence, vandalism, arson, and other hate crimes targeted against mosques, Muslims, or those perceived to be Muslims. So they're using this in the beginning to try to control what people are saying. Now, do we really need another law that's saying anyone that commits violence, vandalism, arson against another group of people is a crime? No, we already have those laws. Why do we have to continually rewrite them? It makes no sense. The reason why they're rewriting them is to stick in the hate speech part, the part where they want to control speech and what you say. So the part of the House resolution that should most concern all Americans is the urging of local and federal law enforcement authorities to work to prevent hate crimes and to prosecute to the fullest extent of the law those perpetrators of hate crimes. So what is a hate crime? The law already prohibits violence, threats of violence, and law enforcement authorities already know what to do in that case. Intimidation, destruction, damage, vandalism. Well, we already have laws on the book for that. However, bigotry and hateful rhetoric in its title, Americans should be worried about this. So what the government is doing is they're creating this legislation to coincide with UN HRC Resolution 1618, which was passed in March of 2011 without a vote. Resolution 1618 seeks to limit speech that is viewed as discriminatory or which involves the defamation of a religion, specifically that which can be viewed as incitement to imminent violence. This latest version, which includes the incitement to imminent violence phrase, that is, which criminalizes speech which incites violence against others on the basis of religion, race, or national origin, has succeeded in winning U.S. approval despite the fact that it indirectly places limitations on speech. And basically, what they're saying right now is they will tell you through these laws, and this is always the first step, what you can and cannot say. And through this legislation, 569, they can basically hit you with a crime if your speech is considered hateful, if your speech doesn't agree with the government's narrative of what free speech should be, and they can press charges. But the question is, who decides this? See, this is the problem with all this. Because everyone comes from a different background. Everyone has a different religion. Everyone has different viewpoints. Everyone has different views on what is free speech and what is controlled speech. And the Constitution says all speech is completely free. There's nothing in there that says you can say this or you can't say that. That's why they put that in there, where they said the people have the right to free speech. And everyone has to realize that once you start controlling the speech, just like political correctness, because that's really what it is. They're controlling and giving you permitted speech because they're telling you which words you're allowed to use and which words you aren't allowed to use. And what they do is they slowly create these laws saying now it's a crime to say that, it's a crime to say this, and they expand it, and this is what is happening right now. Because they're pushing their agenda. Their agenda is to get rid of the Bill of Rights. It's a thorn in their side. Now, yesterday Obama came out with his gun control laws, and they started throwing around statistics. And a journalist, Emily Miller, went on Twitter to say, well, wait a minute. Obama came out with Josh Earnest, and they delivered some statistics saying that there are 30,000 gun deaths in America, and we need to stop this. Well, Emily went a little bit further to look at these statistics, and she found that, well, 20,000 of those were from suicides. So if the people didn't commit suicide by a gun, they would have chose poison, they would have hung themselves, thrown themselves out of a building. So can you really count those? And then when you look closely at this, and you subtract the 21,175, you get 8,000 from homicides. And the FBI actually says, yes, it's 8,124. So the administration is just throwing around statistics, and if you don't look closely at the statistics, they're very misleading. Now, DHS is pushing the Real ID. They want all states to come on board, and they've given other states like California another 10 months to come in line with their Real ID Act. And DHS is out there, and they're saying that, no, we're not setting up a central database of everyone's information. That's completely fake, phony, and false. No, we're not. That's a rumor. We're not doing that. And it's funny because when you look at the text of the Real ID Act, Title 2, Section 202, D12, there's a section in there that says provide electronic access to all other states to information contained in the motor vehicle database of the state, which says they are collecting all that information to be brought into a centralized database. And this information will then be shared with all the agencies. So what they're really saying is fake, phony, and false. It is a lie. They are creating a centralized database system. Now, out in Oregon, we see the situation is heating up. We know the FBI is there, and Oath Keepers put out kind of a statement here, and they have received credible information from an active duty source within the Special Operations community that at least one Reserve National Guard Special Operations Detachment unit under the command of Joint Special Operations Command has been tasked for the standoff at the Wildlife Reserve, and they moved into the area. And I've always said that we need to be very worried about agent provocateurs, and it looks like they're going to be cutting off the power to the Wildlife Reserve to try to force the people out of this area. But what's very interesting is from Oath Keepers, Stuart Rhodes, he said the following, that Oath Keepers opposes the armed occupation of the wildlife refuge for the reasons already stated last Friday. And he went on to say that we cannot force ourselves or our protection on people who do not want it. Dwight and Stephen Hammond have made it clear through their attorney that they just want to turn themselves in and serve out their sentence. And that clear statement of their intent should be the end of the discussion on this. No patriot group or individual has the right or authority to force an armed standoff on this family or around them against their wishes. You cannot help someone who does not want your help and who are not willing and ready to take a hard stand themselves. But we can see Ammon Bundy and Ryan Payne basically are making a stand. I heard the press conference with Ammon Bundy, and we can see that they are very upset that the BLM has been stealing the land around Oregon, Nevada, and many other states. And when we look at the big picture, we see that the federal government has come in and has taken most of the land. And basically, under the Enclave Act, federal government cannot own land. They can only own the land under federal buildings, armories, and as such. But it seems that they are gobbling up as much land as possible, and most likely they're doing this as collateral for the debt. And this is why they need more and more of this land. But the federal government does not own this land. And we can see at this point that this is a setup which is perfect for Obama to use this situation to demonize patriots, constitutionalists, and it seems like they would like this whole entire scenario to go south very quickly. But they need to make it look like the people in the wildlife refuge started it. And Stuart Rhodes is saying that he has a warning to the Obama administration that this is not going to be another Waco. He says, we oppose that what Ammon Bundy and Ryan Payne have done. We must warn the Obama administration that it does not have free rein to Waco the people in the standoff by using deadly military force, such as the force that's coming in right now or the FBI. He says the federal government must respect their right to due process and to do all it can to end this standoff peacefully without loss of life. And it must treat it like the Freeman standoff, not the Waco standoff. And I agree with him completely. There's no reason to go in there with guns blazing. But as we know, the government, the way they do things, they want a standoff. They want a big shootout. They want to demonize the patriots, the people who are standing up for the Constitution, the rights of the people. And they don't want these people showing that the federal government doesn't have authorization to take the land from the people. Because nowhere in the Constitution does it say the federal government has the right to take the land. So we're going to have to watch this very carefully to see what is going to occur, what's going to happen, because as things go on, we need to look at who is the agent provocateur, what they're trying to accomplish, and how they're going to make this scenario evolve into a big shootout. And this is what we need to look for. Now, out in North Korea, it's been all over the corporate media, and they're really blowing this out of proportion. And basically, they're saying that North Korea basically set off a hydrogen bomb underground, which caused a man-made earthquake. But the problem is that the estimated explosive yield from North Korea's nuclear explosion was smaller than what even a failed H-bomb detonation would produce. So at this point, we really don't have the evidence that they actually detonated an H-bomb. Now, of course, NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg says the nuclear weapons test announced by North Korea is a clear breach of UN Security Council resolution and undermines regional and international security. Now, of course, there's no proof whatsoever. They haven't shown any proof. Everyone is just screaming and yelling that this is a breach. Russia said, well, wait a minute, hold on, everyone. It hasn't been confirmed that North Korea has carried out an actual nuclear test. Now, I know they're out there saying that, yes, they're admitting that they did this test, but again, we have to look at the propaganda aspect of this. Now, the U.S. is out there saying, well, all the information doesn't point to an H-bomb, but there was some type of nuclear explosion or something, and we can see why this is taking place at this time. They're using this propaganda to bring all the players together. And we have to remember the players are always the same. It's going to be Iran, Syria, North Korea, China, Russia, and the other BRIC nations for this great war. And this is what they're doing at this point. South Korea is already out there saying that they're going to increase its monitoring of North Korea. They're going to increase their military budgets, that they're very angry with the North Koreans. And the UN Security Council condemns North Korea's nuclear test. But of course, no one has given any proof that it was a nuclear test whatsoever. Everyone is just screaming and yelling and saying this is what it was. And already the U.S. is saying, well, because of this nuclear explosion, we don't know if it's an H-bomb or whatever it is, but it doesn't really matter, we're going to impose more sanctions on North Korea. This is what it's all about. This is what all this propaganda is about. Just like the cyber attacks on Sony, boom, they knew exactly it was North Korea and they had to place sanctions. They need to bring in the players into the fold because at this point the economy is collapsing. The entire system is imploding, and they need the players ready to go. They need to provoke each one of these countries. Now, I say, let's wait for the proof. I mean, they've had an earthquake, and right now they jump to, yes, there was an H-bomb, then it wasn't an H-bomb, then it was some type of nuclear explosion, but we're not really sure. And they continually go on and on and on about this. Now, out in Yemen, we see Saudi Arabia and the U.S., they have hit a center for the blind. They bombed the center for the blind, and the United Nations High Commission for Human Rights confirmed that, yes, Saudi Arabia hit the center for the blind. Now, they tried to contact Washington, and right now, they have not responded to any requests for comment or anything like this. And we have to remember, Saudi Arabia takes its orders from the U.S. The U.S. is orchestrating everything that's going on in the Middle East. We see that U.S., Britain, France, Egypt, Italy, they're getting ready for a military offensive for early 2016 in Libya. We're getting more confirmation that this is going to happen. Now, of course, we had the cry out there that, the Islamic State is attacking all our oil fields. Only the ones that the unified government has signed on to, all the others, no, they're not attacking. So this shows us that it's really not the Islamic State. It's the people of Libya trying to take back everything that's being taken away from them. And the cry for help is the catalyst to bring in the coalition forces to bomb the elected government. And this is what is happening at this point. Right now, Turkey is engaged in blackmail. They're saying that the EU owes us the funding, and if they do not give us the funding, we will release more refugees into Europe. And this is coming from a member of the European Parliament. And the European Commission was set up to give them about €3 billion, which is about $3.8 billion, to fund Turkey in November, of which €500 million have been transferred to Ankara to help it bolster border security and accommodate some 2.2 million Syrian refugees. The rest is still to be donated to the fund by the EU member states. So that is what he wants. And if it doesn't happen, he's going to say, I'm releasing the rest of the refugees. So basically, he's trying to blackmail the EU. He wants money. We see Saudi Arabia right now, because what happened in Iran, they're calling an emergency meeting of the Gulf Cooperation Council, and they're going to discuss on what they're going to do about this problem and what actions they're going to take. So we're going to have to watch that situation very, very carefully, because we know that this is going to start chaos in the region. Chaos is going to lead to war. The U.S. will get involved. Russia will get involved. And everything is starting to move down this path. Germany right now has sent 4 additional tornado reconnaissance planes to Turkey to support the U.S. coalition force in Syria. We know they're not going after the Islamic State. We know all this equipment's being brought in, like NATO with their AWACS planes, to prepare for some type of offensive mission in this area. Now, will these jets be used for Libya? Will it be used for another reason? But we see already they're trying to convince us that the peace talks with Russia and Syria might not go as well, because what's happening in Iran with Saudi Arabia might derail them. But we can see that Germany, as part of its one-year mission, also sent a frigate to protect the French aircraft carrier Charles de Gaulle in the Mediterranean. Germany sent a team of pilots, technicians, reconnaissance specialists to the Incirlik base to begin their mission in Syria. And the U.S. government, the central bankers, the coalition forces, they're on their next plan already. And we can see it forming already. It has to do with Iran. It has to do with Saudi Arabia. It has to do with the coalition forces. And this next plan can't be small. I mean, they can't risk Russia stepping in once again and derailing everything they set out to do. And that is to go into Syria, to go into Iran, remove the governments there. So whatever they do at this point has to be big. It has to be an event size where the people of Europe, the people of the United States feel it, where they want to go to war. So at this point, we can see that this is what they've been setting up, and they're going to try to push this as hard as they possibly can. Now, is this plan going to be foolproof? Well, as we can see from their past history, none of their plans are foolproof. They get interrupted by Russia. Putin steps in, creates a different environment than one that they were trying to create, and it derails everything that they want to do. So they have to go back to the drawing board and come up with something different. Now, we're going to have to watch this very carefully, because as we know, they are never going to stop trying. They will continually do what they need to do, or this system comes crumbling down, and they are blamed. The central bank is blamed, and they will not let this happen. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.